Welcome. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Welcome to Last Chance to Paint with artist John Dyer, brought to you by Born Free. So in this session, we'll be learning all about the Amazon rainforest, and we'll also be painting it as well, which is really exciting. My name's Charlie, and my colleague Laura is busy working away in the background to help answer some of your questions. And without further ado, it's my absolute delight to introduce artist and creative partner of Born Free, John Dyer.
Hi, thanks for joining in with this webinar, everybody. I'm so pleased that you can make it, and this is going to be great fun. So I hope you've got your paints or your pencils or art materials ready, and hopefully in the next sort of 50 minutes, we're all going to create a wonderful painting or picture of the Amazon rainforest with the beautiful birds, the macaw birds, of which there are 17 different species that we're going to have a look at today. So it's going to be great fun. Paint along with me. And hopefully this is a taster to the bigger Last Chance to Paint project that we offer online. And it's all free. It's run in partnership with the Born Free Foundation. And we can take you on a full expedition to the Amazon rainforest with a daily video, a daily blog, photographs. So you can really immerse yourself in that. And you can still, even though I'm not there now, you can send in questions and I'll answer them. And if I don't know the answers, I'll get the answers for you. So we make it live for you. So please travel with us. We've got 3 expeditions. Amazon, the Borneo rainforest, and also Kenya, which we've recently done. And they are very rich and worthwhile resources to do that dovetail to the curriculum. And they use art as a vehicle for getting loads of information across. So please do follow those when you can.
Yeah, absolutely. They are fantastic. And we'll make sure that we put the links to those resources in the chat box for you as well. But thank you, John. That's brilliant. So in a moment, John is going to start creating his artwork. He'll be painting online using a program called Procreate. So you'll be able to see from his iPad painting along. As soon as John gets started with his painting, please do start your own paintings. Okay, you can follow along with John. And don't worry if we're going a little bit fast. We'll regularly kind of pause, and also you're absolutely welcome to continue painting after the webinar has finished. So don't worry if you haven't been able to get everything done. There'll be time afterwards for you guys to finish. But great. Just as we're getting started then, John, and getting the painting up on the screen, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been painting as long as everybody who's watching, really. I started as a child, just kept painting, and I quickly discovered a love of the environment. And I found that using art and photography was a really great way to learn. And I've just been painting the whole of my life, and predominantly doing paintings of Cornwall, where I live. You can all see a nice white square now, which is very exciting. This is what we're going to be painting on in a minute. And I'm the artist in residence for the Eden Project in Cornwall. So I've been working alongside them for over 20 years and learning all sorts of things about the environment and traveling to amazing places like Peru and Costa Rica and Australia and the Philippines and other places. And I suddenly realized that really I should be doing this in a more coherent way with schools, because so many schools study my work. So hence Last Chance to Paint has been launched. And that was when the very last male northern white rhino passed away in Kenya. And we've recently got back from Kenya to meet the other. There are 2 more northern white rhino left, but there is a point where we can use art to learn, to celebrate, and to think, and to do it individually. So yeah, I think that it's an important thing to use creativity. It's probably a better word than art in your lives wherever you can. And I'm also proud to work with Born Free Foundation, and I'm an artist for the Earth. For Earth Day in the United States. So lots of good environmental credentials. But let me make a start on this painting. So I'm using the app, this app Procreate on my iPad. So that's what I've got. I've got this iPad and I'm going to be doing that. The reason I'm doing that is we can share this with you so well, so much easier than using actual paint. But I am going to use this in a way as if I'm using paint. So I'm not going to be using all the clever techniques that it can do. And it is an amazing app. And they have sponsored Last Chance to Paint, amazing company. And they have educational pricing for schools. Fantastic app. So let's start with the rainforest and macaws. Is that right, Charlie? If I get some paint down, some digital paint?
Absolutely. Yeah, brilliant. Fantastic.
So what I'll do, so Charlie, you interrupt me whenever you want to talk about other stuff, but
Yeah.
otherwise I've just got to roughly annotate, what I'm doing. So I'm just going to use a brush with some pale yellow paint just to put in a sky, the top where the rainforest. It was a background color, and I just work. I'm just making my brush a bit bigger, so you might want to choose a different brush. And I'm going to make this yellow slightly softer, just a sort of like a warm kind of like end of the day or beginning of the day wash of yellow paint across our paper. And just I'll probably leave something paler in the middle, and then I guess going to bring in some other colors at the bottom in a minute. So I like to do that. I work in acrylic paint. You're probably working in watercolors or maybe poster paint. Some of you might have acrylics. They're all really good to use. And I just like to get rid of that white and work on it. And you'll be working wet on wet, and that's absolutely fine if you have confidence. So I'm just going to bring in some other colors at the bottom here. I'm going to lay on some pale blues at the bottom here. And this might even go a little bit green as you're putting this on. And that's kind of good if it does do that. Doing it less, it's doing that less on my digital drawing here than it might do with you. But green's good. That's the color of the rainforest.
And do they have to use these colors, John, or can they use any color that they like?
No, you can use any color you like, although I am deliberately putting a palish yellow down because I know the colors I'm going to put on top in a minute, which is the scarlet macaw. And I know that when we put the red paint on the yellow, it will work well with it. Whereas if I put a dark blue for a night sky and then you're putting the red on, you might end up with a purpley color. So I'm doing this in a way to make this as easy technically for you as I can. But yeah, you can use any color. It's a piece of art. It's not a photograph. So you could have soft pinks, you could have pale blues, you could have a deep blue for night sky if you're confident and the paint's going to dry as you're going along. And as Charlie said, you don't have to finish it all now. There will be a recording of this available in a few days or a couple of weeks' time. And there are many other webinars you can rewatch of me. In fact, one doing macaws anyway. So there's plenty of reference. But yeah, you can choose your colors. I'm definitely not painting the rainforest as it actually looks, which is pretty much, it looks like any other forest in the world. It's got brown sort of leaves on the floor and dark trunks of the trees, and then lots of lovely leaf shapes, but those leaf shapes are kind of more tropical. And let's start to bring some of those in now. So we can put in some stems of some of the trees. And in fact, I will use a sort of purpley color here. And I'm just going to bring in some sort of tree shapes here. See, that's too big, but that's all right. I'm just going to work with that and just bring this up here. This might be where a couple of the macaws might be sitting in a moment. So you can put these lines and shapes in any way you like, okay, on your painting. There's no, I don't have this planned. You can just put it in as you see fit, okay? And it might even be that some of that blue behind now looks a bit like the river, but that's just coincidental. This is where the painting has as big a voice in this as I do and the subject matter. And then I might put in some paler paint just on the top here, just where it might be catching the light. And we just slowly sort of work up the background of the painting. So you'll see lots of amazing plants in the rainforest, but the big difference is you're going to get much more sort of tropically foliage. So I'm going to use some dark greens here, and then I'm going to just bring in some sort of fan sort of shapes of the palms you'll get in the rainforest on the floor. You get lots of lovely parlor palms. In fact, they were very popular in the Victorian era as houseplants, and still are, because they thrive in slight gloomy conditions in houses, because they grow in gloomy conditions on the forest floor in the rainforest. In fact, lots of the houseplants that we know will have tropical, well, they will come from the tropics, which is quite interesting to know that. And when they planted the Eden Project up, it wasn't easy for them to make the rainforest biome. It definitely wasn't. However, there were more challenges with the Mediterranean biome or the warm temperate biome, because those plants weren't easily available in garden centers all over the world. And there are some key plants at Eden that just weren't available, obviously, but broadly, it was like a large set of pot plants they could put in, because rainforest plants are everywhere. So once we start to establish that, we might also find that we've got some beautiful fan palms coming in over the top, and you can start to put in some of these here. So we're trying to make an interesting background, a theatre set in a way, where we can put our parrots. And I said, there's no right or wrong to this. You can do it however you like, and pretty much any leaf shape you imagine, you're going to find in the rainforest. I did a stop frame animation years ago, back in 1989, the first time I was in the Amazon, with a good friend of mine who was making a film over there. We spent about an hour collecting leaves in the rainforest, and we put them all on a little beach next to the Amazon River, and we just stop frame them like a click, 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 click. And it was astonishing, the variety of shapes and leaf forms that you find just in a very small patch of land in the tropics. It's extremely biodiverse. And
so you can't go wrong when you're painting leaves from the Amazon.
No, you could do any you like. So we could put in a banana, which maybe will have a more of a yellowy green, brighter green here. Maybe we're bringing a banana here, and then they sort of look a bit like that. You don't have to completely copy what I'm doing. It's literally, you could all have your own variety. It's literally like growing your own tropical garden here. And this is the fun of it. There's no right or wrong. And if it goes slightly wrong, like I did with that tree trunk I was putting at the bottom here, it was a bit, obviously I had my Apple Pencil set too wide digitally, but it's fine. I just made the base of that trunk wider. So paint can be a great thing, that it will take you to places and make you do things that you didn't imagine. And that can be a benefit sometimes. And I've seen many artists make a mistake because it's gone wrong with the art materials, and they just work it in. And that's what I've learned to do with my paintings. I just work in any mistakes that happen, so that they work to my advantage. So I end up with a painting not necessarily that I had entirely planned in my head. The only thing I've got planned today was a rough pale background color and macaws. And I haven't even decided what the macaws are going to be like yet. So we will do a whole selection of those with that. So
amazing. We've had a couple of questions already, John, from schools. Yeah. So we've got one here that says, how long does it take for you to create a piece of artwork?
That's a really good question. So there's a painting just behind me here. This is a 2-foot square canvas. And that was actually done in the Amazon rainforest as part of Last Chance to Paint. So if you follow our Spirit of the Rainforest expedition with your class, you'll see me at work on that painting, where I was, what was happening, the Amazon Indians who were with me at the time, and the sounds of the toucans flying overhead. But that painting would have taken about 3 hours to do from start to finish. If I'm just working in my studio in Cornwall and Falmouth, the same painting might take me 2 or 3 days, because I'm not surrounded by all that inspiration, and I get other distractions, like I might go make a cup of tea, or the phone might ring, or the doorbell might go, and then I lose my place, and I can't just look around me and go, wow, look at that beautiful orchid, or wow, that amazing sound. What was that? That was a toucan, was it? And look up a toucan in my field guide, because you don't see lots of animals in the rainforest, you hear them though. But yeah, when I'm on the ground, 2 or 3 hours will pretty much do a painting, whether it's that size or a slightly smaller one. I'd like to capture a moment in time, and I think that's quite important in my work, that I don't rework them all too much. Sometimes I have to, but I try not to. I try to get at least 80% of it done in that time frame, and generally all of it done.
No, that's amazing. We have a few more streaming in, so thank you to all the schools who are sending your questions into us. So John, you've obviously painted in lots of different parts of the world, especially for Last Chance to Paint. You've painted in Kenya, you've painted in Borneo, and also the Amazon rainforest as well. We have a question here, which has been your favourite place to paint so far?
So hard to answer. I love them all. I think it's so hard to answer. I think in terms of painting, I think I enjoyed the Amazon probably the most, and that's not necessarily because of the subject, actually. That's because I had an Amazon Indian friend of mine who's also an artist to work with, and that really informed my art and my understanding of what I was looking at in terms of how he connected to his environment. If I took that out of the mix entirely, then I think I would say Kenya was my favorite place to paint, because of the variety of animals and environments, and the vibrancy of the Maasai tribe and their clothing, and the whole of their culture was beguiling and bewitching and just beautiful. And I felt so at home there. And Born Free obviously hosted me wonderfully well. But in terms of painting, I think it would be Kenya. So out of the 3 we've done, the Amazon rainforest, Borneo and Kenya, the 2 I would be keenest to go back to would be the Amazon rainforest and Kenya. That's not to say that Borneo wasn't amazing, because it was, but you're forcing me to pick here.
Very difficult choice. That actually links in quite nicely to another question, John, and that is, what was life like living with a tribe in the rainforest?
Challenging. It is challenging because I'm used to, chairs and, running water, and basic level of hygiene that I'm used to, and, just being able to take a shower. So whenever you're in a remote situation, particularly with the tribe, you have to get used to foregoing all of that. If you want to drink something, you get the water from the river, which is rainwater. You need to sterilize it or put up with the consequences, or filter it. We use a filtration system. If you want to have a wash, you've got to do that in the river, which is all fine. That's great. It's just, but you have to quickly, high speed, learn that that's all okay and get used to doing it. And yeah, so there's also a hierarchy in any tribal group that one has to be aware of. And that was probably more prominent in the Amazon than in other places that I have been. So my friend Nishiwaka Yamanawa, who's a very talented artist who I taught to paint, or not, I didn't really teach him to paint, I enabled him to paint at the Eden Project in 2015, and then we continued the project with his tribe. He wasn't in a position of power in the tribe, so therefore they don't really have, like the Penanda, they don't really have a word for thank you. Everything belongs to everybody, which is fine to a point, but did prove slightly challenging working with him. So, I'd set up in the forest and we'd be painting together, and he'd be teaching me about a particular spiritual subject that we were working with. And then another member of the tribe, in fact, not any member of the tribe, but the chief of the tribe, would just come into the forest and be very polite and then take his brushes because they wanted his brushes. That sort of thing, which is perfectly fine in the tribe because everything is everybody's, because that's the way they live. So if there's a hunt and they come back with some with some birds to feed the tribe, which is how they live. That's how they have to live, or some fish from the river, or some vegetables they've dug up. They can't hoard it. They can't put it in their larder or in their fridge for their family of 3 or 4. It is for the tribe, and if they didn't live like that, they wouldn't survive. So, but those are kind of immediate challenges you have to accept and work with. So in terms of the brushes suddenly being taken because somebody else wanted to have them, and why shouldn't they? I've prepared for that. So then I have more brushes, which I then disappear. So, it's not a problem, but, and it's not them being rude or difficult. It's just a very different way of living. There's no locks on doors. There's money isn't really a thing. So yeah, you have to get around that, but snakes and spiders are a challenge.
I can imagine. It sounds absolutely fascinating, John. No, thank you. That's brilliant. Fourfield Junior School in Liverpool would like to know how long you stayed in the rainforest with the tribe.
That's a good question. It was just a few days. It's sort of like about 5, 6, 7 days. I need to rewatch the videos myself. I always do. So you've got about nearly a week's worth of traveling from leaving the UK to get there. Combine it all up. So, and then I do quite short, sharp expeditions, because if a team member or myself gets poorly, you can not worry about it. You just complete the expedition and then you can get yourself sorted out. And invariably, somebody will be poorly, normally me, with some sort of stomach problem. So I don't go for extended periods, because then you need extended finance. You'd need doctors involved. You'd need more medical care. It becomes so much more complicated. And also you very quickly outstay your welcome. So I feel it's important to do short, sharp, in-depth sort of visits, and not to overstay one's welcome, because naturally you are interfering with their lives, and you don't want to turn them into a sort of like a goldfish bowl. I want to be in the middle. I want to be in the middle of the pond swimming with them, and then I want to leave. Yeah, I don't want to treat them like I put them under a microscope and analyzing them. That's not the point of Last Chance to Paint. We go, we tell you their stories, we listen, we get involved, and then we leave as quickly as we can with the least disruption. That's quite deliberate.
Brilliant. And of course, you can find all the videos on the Last Chance to Paint website for all of those exhibitions. So including the Amazon with the Yawanara tribe, Borneo with the orangutans, and also Kenya, where we visit the last 2 northern white rhinos as well. So fantastic. That's great. I can't believe we've had so many questions. It's absolutely fantastic. Thank you all for sending those in. We'll try and get through as many as we can today. So we have a few based around the Amazon as well. So St Joseph's School in Upton would like to know what your favourite animal from the Amazon is to paint.
Oh, to paint, my favourite animal. Well, I love painting birds, but even though I'm not terribly keen on snakes, just because not because there's anything wrong with snakes, but I nearly trod on one on the Amazon and I'm still freaked out about it. My friend Nishiwaka literally put his whole arm across and literally winded me, thumped me in the chest because I was just about to walk onto quite a nasty viper. So, and you don't get a second chance if you do that. It's not good for the viper, and it's even worse for the person that does that. So, but I think actually I rather like painting the snakes. Weirdly enough, I'm not painting the snake now, but I'm painting like a windy liana, but it literally could be a snake. And I love the way that the snake is so, it's such a lovely, it takes such a lovely form. So again, in the painting behind me, but again, this is on the videos, this is a story of two snakes. You probably can't make it out, it's too far away, but there's a snake, it's the ground snake and the snake of the air snake, basically the anaconda and the boa constrictor. But it's very, very carefully tied up to their spirituality. And they, I wouldn't say they worship these snakes, but they definitely do communicate with the spirits of these snakes during their tribal ceremonies. And when they see a snake like the viper that was in the tribal village that I nearly trod on, they're very much aware that something's not right. That's the way they interpret it. And that they then need to go on what they call a dieta, or a certain way of living and a certain way of eating for a period of time, to almost like appease the spirits of what's gone wrong. So they're very closely bound to the snake. But the markings on the snake are and the way that they paint them and the way they use them on their bodies. So they will decorate using a plant dye, like a black plant dye. And again, you'll see this on the video if you can engage with the whole Amazon expedition, which I really hope the teachers will do, because it's unique. It really is unique, and it's superbly worthwhile for your children to watch all of this. But Merlin Hanbury Tennyson, who is one of our team members, the Yawanawa tribe made him up as a full anaconda snake with the face and body paint or dye. And it's worth watching what they do. So the snake is very important to them, and when they apply the patterns from the snake, you know, that you get these beautiful patterns on the skin of the snake. I kind of want to draw it for a bit. I can't really because I'm doing this now. Maybe I could draw one at the bottom here. Yeah, let's do that. Let's just sort of. I'm just going to add in a snake here, which you don't necessarily have to do because this is going off track somewhat. But let's just put a snake in here.
They're all part of the Amazon. So obviously the Amazon is one of the most biodiverse, incredibly rich ecosystems on the planet. And there's as well as 40,000 different plant species. There's 1,300 species of bird, 3,000 types of fish, 430 mammals, and even 2.5 million different species of insects. So a huge variety. So absolutely, feel free to add in other wildlife.
I'm adding the bit of a snake here for you just because it goes in with our conversation. And this is the joy of painting and art, that you can just react to the world or a conversation. Those 2.5 million insects, Charlie, that you mentioned, I think it was 2.something million insects in the Amazon rainforest, they were all in my hut.
I can imagine.
I counted them all. That's why you have the official number.
They're all very important, though. They've all got their own little jobs, working away in the rainforest.
They do. The entire ceiling of the little wooden hut thatched with palm leaves that I was staying in with my daughter Martha Lily, who you'll see on the video. She's incredibly entertaining as well and will teach you loads. Entirely encrusted with spiders. Entirely. It was basically like a living spider and thatch combination.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
So this is typically how the Yawanawa might do a snake. So I've chosen a nice blue, and then they would come in here, and they've got this amazing sort of patterns that they would do, and they pick out these patterns very tribally like this. And this is I really need Nishiwaka Yawanawa to do this for you, because he's been doing this since birth. And when we always ask the children, this is another reason I'd really like to run the full expedition projects, teachers. Wherever we go, we get a class of children, at least one class of children, to paint their story, to paint their their lives, so that when hopefully your children send in their art to our World Gallery, so we can all bear witness, their art bears witness to what we all risk losing, because we do risk losing things, but we won't if we all have this awareness, which Last Chance to Paint helps to raise this awareness. They all drew this and painted the spiritual form of the animal, not the actual form of the animal. And I found that completely fascinating. They weren't primed to do so. They were just told or asked to just paint their story, and they all put the spiritual version of the animal in. So this would be classically the sort of shapes you would see on their face markings and body markings, and it all comes from a snake. So that sort of like, it illustrates it very simplistically for you, because
That's beautiful.
we are doing macaws. I'm going to start them pretty much imminently. But yeah, so you kind of get the idea. And then if any of you are doing this snake, then you can bring in other bands of color in around these patterns. This is basically loosely based on a boa constrictor, so they're slithering past the bottom of our painting. And yeah, like Charlie said, all those 2.5 million?
2.5 million, but I know they're always discovering new species as well, so that number might even be out of date now.
It literally could be double that. It literally could. I mean, you miss every other one. It could be so easy. We haven't explored enough, and we are losing so much rainforest that we're losing species that we have never discovered. That's just a fact, that we are losing things that we've never discovered, and we're losing plants we've never discovered, and the usefulness of the chemistry that they might have in their roots, in their bark, in their seeds, in their flowers. And a lot of the medications that we use rely on discoveries from plants. So yeah, it is an amazing resource, and we're squandering it a little bit.
Yeah, so it's a really important habitat, not just for us, but for wildlife as well. And as John said, there's plants that we can use for medicines. There's actually lots of cancer medicines that have originated from the rainforests around the world. There's different species we haven't discovered yet, which could unlock other cures as well. But as well as that, the Amazon rainforest is known as the lungs of the earth. So it produces a huge amount of oxygen, so around 20%. And that's 1 in every 5 breaths that you take will come from the rainforest. So it's an incredibly important habitat to maintain for wildlife and biodiversity, but also for us as well. And it's just an absolutely incredible place. In fact, the Amazon rainforest that we're painting today, it's so big, you could fit the whole of the UK into it 17 times. It's absolutely enormous. So the whole of the UK 17 times into just one rainforest.
That is partly why it takes so long to get there, because even when you land in Rio or Sao Paulo, or you've got to travel right across. So for the Aranawa, they're in the region called Acre, which is towards the Peruvian border. It's a long journey, and you're flying over. Well, sadly, I was flying with Robin Humphrey-Tennyson, good friend of mine, who's a 20th century world's greatest explorer and founder of Survival International, and still going strong, luckily. But flying with him across Brazil and landing in Brasilia, which is the capital of Brazil. But if you go back to the 70s, Brasilia didn't exist, and we flew for hours over beef plantations and agriculture. And when he was there in the 70s, it was all just virgin rainforest. And it's so much of it has gone, which is why it's so critical to raise awareness that it's worth so much more to us all up than it is down. So we just need to be mindful. Charlie, can I start to put some macaws in my painting, do you think?
Absolutely, I think so. I think it's looking great. I hope that you guys who are painting along in classrooms are managing to keep up. If you need us to slow down at all, just let us know. But I think we should be good to start some macaws, because even if you're not quite ready yet, you can keep an eye on what John's doing, and then you can finish off a little bit later as well. But that looks absolutely fantastic. What a beautiful painting, John. Looks great.
It's just very simple. I am aware that in the webinars I tend to go really quickly because that's the way I paint, but so I'm doing them a little bit simpler, but I think it still shows the process really well, and hopefully it's not such a dash for the children. And I can do it slightly slower on Procreate like this because it works. Right, I'm going to put a scarlet macaw in, and I'm going to rest it somewhere in my painting. So it's going to be sort of sitting up. So if you watch me doing this, and then you can decide if this fits in. I'm going to do a few in this painting, and I'm not quite sure whether they're going to go, but I'm going to start with one here. So I'm just getting a nice bright red color, which is why I put this yellow in the background, because if it picks up any yellow, it's just going to, we won't notice because it will just go into the red. So I did that deliberately, like I said. So, and you just develop quite simple shape, and they've got a very long tail, goes down like this, and you can do some nice swift marks, and then it's going to be sitting on this branch and feathers down there. And then I'm going to bring the other colors in a minute. So I'm just going to establish the basic shape, and it's a very simple thing to do. You can imagine where its wing is at the back. That's basically the shape of a scarlet macaw. And then
lovely and simple.
Really simple. And you'll find this in the teaching, in the lesson plans, actually, for the Amazon rainforest, for the full expedition. You'll find there's a page on doing this, exactly this, which is a lovely thing to do with your class. And the strength of Last Chance to Paint is it's not an art project. And this is important to stress to you. You're doing art today, but the reason we're doing this art is so we can talk about the rainforest and learn about it. That's why we're doing the art, and the art will make you remember it. And by doing the art with me, hopefully you'll be better painters as well. So there's a bonus. Right, I'm going to do another macaw. So I'm just going to let that dry down, even though mine's dry because it's digital, but I'm going to do another one. I think I've got some pictures in front of me here, so I'm not just making these up. Let me show you, because I do use reference, and I encourage you to have reference. So you can see I am using some reference here for the birds. I do know how they work because I've painted them before, but this is a sort of thing that's good if you're doing a project to have some cheat sheets, what I would call field guides around. You can't just expect the children to magically know what an elephant looks like, or a zebra looks like, or a macaw looks like. So you do need some reference, but what you do with the reference is very creative. So I know that a scarlet macaw can be around 1 meter long, which is quite impressive. So I'm going to put one flying up here. So that's a bit of a different shape. They've got quite a squared off head.
Yep, they're actually the largest type of parrot. So there are 17 different species of macaw, and they all live around kind of Central and Southern America. So they're found around the rainforests, but also the savanna habitats and some dry woodland of South America as well.
Yeah, and I've seen them in both those habitats, Charlie. I've seen them
amazing
in the Amazon rainforest, sort of flying in 2s or 3s across the canopy. Beautiful birds. But I've also seen them in the Pantanal of Brazil, which is like a savanna area with wetlands, and they're easier to see there because you don't have the canopy of the trees hiding them. Beautiful animals.
Amazing. And so these are scarlet macaws that you're painting, is that right, John?
Yeah, that's right. So I'm doing scarlet macaws. I probably will put in one of the blue and yellow ones. Does that have a technical name, Charlie? The blue and yellow one? It must have.
No, they're just called blue and yellow macaws. So we've got the scarlet macaw, we've got the blue and yellow macaw, we've got the red and green macaw, amongst many others. But those are some of the bigger, more charismatic species that you might find in the rainforest.
Well, I might put a blue and yellow one in because there was a lovely one that used to just hang around in Mutum, which is the Yawanawa village, and this blue and yellow macaw. You'll see it on our videos. Just kind of sat there next to somebody's washing, just kind of hanging out, just really nice. So in Cornwall I get a seagull, but in the Amazon you're going to get either a vulture or a macaw probably. Right.
Amazing.
So just doing this. So I'm just putting the red on here. So I'm deliberately not blocking it in with lots of red because I'm hopefully showing you as well that there's going to be other areas of color. So now let's skip to that other area of color, and you can see. So I'm going to put in a nice sort of bright blue, but this could be any color blue that you've got, because you're not going to have a full paint box of colors that Procreate will magically generate there. So any blue you've got is perfect for this, because this isn't a photograph. This is a piece of art and is as much connected to you as it is a rainforest, and will hopefully inform you from this day on for your whole life that you painted macaws with some artist you can't remember the name of, and maybe some organization you can't remember the name of, but you did them for a reason because the Amazon was important. That's what I want you to remember. The Amazon is important. So make good choices in your life, the least worst choices you can make, to make sure we keep as much biodiversity as we can, because we all rely on it every day for our oxygen, for our healthcare, for our food. And do you know, one of the reasons I want you to follow all of our expeditions, whether it's the Amazon, Borneo, or Kenya, or the next 3 we're planning that will come up over the next 3 years, you'll get to learn the names and meet the children. And it's their home, it's where they live. So it's not just a forest that's coming down, it's people's homes that are coming down. And that's really important that you learn that and build a connection and a bond, as I have done with people around the world. And then it isn't just a bit of news. It's that really matters. So, but it's really positive. We all learn this because at that point, then if enough people are making good decisions, then it's not going to end in a disaster. It will all be absolutely fine. And nature has an amazing way of fighting back and regrowing really, really quickly. I know we've all been through this hideous pandemic, and I'm not going to talk about that, but I will mention one thing, that we did immediately see nature taking back over within weeks, deer in cities, and just wild plants growing as the council went out weeding and settling things. And again, we've seen this in when there was a big nuclear disaster many years back. Again, I'm not going to go into that, but what we do know is that whole area, which was radioactive in a disaster zone, is one of the most biodiverse places on planet Earth now. So nature will fight back and thrive, and it only needs half a chance to do so. We just need to give it a breathing space, don't we, Charlie?
Absolutely. Just give it space. And as John was saying, just tread lightly on the planet. When you're making choices in your everyday lives, whether it's simple things like turning off the lights when you leave a room, not using as much water so that there's enough left over for wildlife, we can all make a huge difference just by making tiny, tiny little positive changes in our lives. Absolutely. And that can have a big impact around the world, not just locally. Every little thing you do can have an impact across the world. So we can all make a really big difference.
We can. There are about 2 billion children, approximately. I didn't count them. I did count the insects in my hut in the Amazon, of course, Charlie, but there are about 2 billion children, I think, approximately on planet Earth. And not every child is able to make a difference. And not every child by any means is having a negative impact on the world. And I'm not saying that any of you are having a negative impact on the world. However, we can, all of us, and that includes everybody that I'm talking to today, we can all do a little bit to be gentler. So I'll tell you one thing I did this year with my family. We made a point of not mowing our lawn until, well, it was probably the last few days of May where it got completely out of control, but pretty much the whole of May, we left it just to be wild grasses and daisies and to up the insect population and to give enough nectar for the bees and to let all the blackbirds that are nesting in our hedges, which we also let grow at this time of year. And just that little thing helps. And by that helping, that helps the pollinators to survive. And that means that the food that I want for my family will get pollinated and produced, and then I'm better off. So it's a tiny thing, but if all 2 billion children do something, it makes a big difference. And if everybody on planet Earth did something, it makes a massive difference.
Absolutely. And we're parts of nature as well. It's really important to remember that we're part of that puzzle, so we can help keep that puzzle ticking along nicely by making those choices as well. But yeah, thank you so much, John. That's great. We've had quite a few more questions, so I'll send some across to you if that's okay, John.
Yeah, do.
Brilliant. So we have a question here. I think I might know the answer to this one, but it's from Barham in Kent, and they've said, what is the hardest animal to paint? I think I might know what you're going to say, John.
Well, I think you think I'm going to say the rhino, yeah, which is,
yeah.
Because of the situation, it was very hard. So Charlie's referring to the Kenyan expedition we've just done, and I'd love you to watch that, even if you only just watch that day when I visit the last 2 northern white rhino, and this is the last 2 of that subspecies on planet Earth. There will be no more, and it was difficult because they kept walking around. So I was, and you, all of you are far too young to get this reference, but some of your teachers might get it. But it was a little bit like the Woody Allen film, where he joins a marching band, but he decides instead of playing a trumpet, he takes a cello. It felt very much like that with my easel, trying to walk around with these. I don't know how much a rhino weighs, I should know this, but they're large animals that you don't want to accidentally walk on you, and you don't want to get in their way, and they've got very pointy faces, i.e. their horns. That was a challenge, I was less convinced I could do it than the team at Old Pesceta, who were very wonderfully hosting us were, and they were like, no, you've got this. And I was like, have I? But it was, yeah, it was a great joy to do so. I hope you watched that video and the other Kenyan videos. And it was a challenge because it was moving and because I was there. And it was actually really, really windy as well. It was incredibly windy on the savannah. And that's a piece of physics, because as the land heats up and the air, and then you get these thermals set up and whirlwinds, it just creates so much wind. I hadn't really anticipated that, but yeah, that was a challenge. So how are you all doing with your macaws? I hope you can, doing these simply for you, you can see, and how I've sort of left the feather shapes on this one, just going back in with a bit of blue paint there. I think I might put another one in here. I'll do a blue and yellow one. And I'm going to work into this after this webinar, probably with some more detail. But I think it's probably beneficial to keep going at this easy pace for you. What do you think, Charlie? I can speed it up, or are people?
I think a nice slow pace. I think a few people have said just keep it nice and slow if that's okay. Yeah. But as I said, please do feel free to carry on afterwards. John's even said he's going to continue this painting after we finish today. So even what he's created at the end of this webinar is not the finished painting. So please do feel free to keep it nice and slow, and you can carry on painting later on today, or even come back to it tomorrow as well with fresh eyes. That sometimes is a really nice thing to do. And you can take inspiration as well from other things around you. So absolutely. And just while we're talking about detail and getting things in as well, Holbrook Primary School has said, how do you focus on getting detail into your paintings?
Well, how do I focus on it? How do I interpret that question? So the way I do a painting is exactly the way you see it now. This is entirely the same working process as if I'm working on acrylic on canvas. And the way I do is I just build up the basic forms and shapes, and I try and keep to my mantra of try and capture the essence of the place rather than your actuality. So if you imagine a Venn diagram, which some of you would have done at school, in one circle I put what I can see, and the other circle I put what I can feel, or what I feel about the subject, how I connect to it emotionally. And where the two cross over, that's where I'm painting. I think that's where you get really great art that can happen, because art should be about emotion and love and connection. Otherwise, it's just a poor photograph. So I add as much detail as I feel is required to get to the essence of the subject and no more. If that makes any sense. I do look at light and shade broadly, a little bit like, the banana I did, there's a darker line of green here. If I just sort of highlight this so I can, while I'm talking to you, so like here on the banana, I just go over and, I can sometimes I might put light on the top, I might have put dark. It doesn't really matter, but I will use basic colors to show form, not necessarily in the way you might think. But apart from that, I don't go overboard on detail. I never really put faces on people. I would never put stitching on clothes. I wouldn't try and put the sort of like the texture of the feathers on the bird more than just a few little brush marks, because for me, I'm not looking for that. For other people, so if you were doing a botanical illustration, like a perfect drawing of an amazing, like a branch of an olive tree with the olives on it, and it's specifically for sort of scientific use, then I put as much detail in as I was mechanically able to do so. And those are beautiful pieces of art or illustration as well. But for something like this, it's just to get the feel of it. And I think if you can accept that not everything has to look, well, in fact, it shouldn't look like a photograph, because otherwise I could just show you a photograph and go, here's a webinar, here's a photograph, we're done. There'd be no point. It's about you going through the process and connecting to the subject as you go, and not being so wound up in it that you're stressed because it doesn't look exactly like a parrot does on the photograph. Because if you're trying to get it back to the parrot on the photograph, well, just show somebody the photograph. I want you to arrange your parrots and to feature them at the size and scale and, flapping around in the sky or whatever you want them doing, because somehow consciously or subconsciously that's entertained you, connected to you, inspired you. Yeah, then that's what art's about. That's what Last Chance to Paint is about. It's about each of you having time, hopefully, to follow the bigger expeditions, so that when you do your Amazon rainforest painting, or Kenyan one, or Borneo one, you're not all just doing macaw. Some of you say, well, actually, through my research and through what John said, I've really interested to look at toucans, and I want to do one about toucans, or I really want to do the earth snake and the ground snake, and that's all I want to do. Or I actually am not interested in the animals at all. I just want to do plant shapes, and I want to grid them up and do really crazy colors and connect it to Andy Warhol's art or pop art, or you might say, oh, I'm just really interested in the tribal culture and the people. I just want to do some sort of portraits of the children and photographs that were taken, and as individual as you can possibly make it. That's what I would love to happen with Last Chance to Paint, for everybody to have a different result. That would be just marvelous, because then when you put it on the fridge at home and your parents or guardians or loved ones look at it over the years, in 20 years time, it's likely, unless you move house, it's likely to still be there, covered in dust, probably a bit yellow, but it's still radiating that message of how we must care for the rainforest and how important it is. And that message we're trying to give to you today will hopefully maybe have found its place into your heart by then, because of the piece of art you have done maybe today or doing the projects. That's the power, I think, of doing a painting. And I can say that from a personal point of view, because that's how I have learnt about so many subjects, because I've painted harvests and people all around the world, as I said, in Peru to the Philippines, and I've learnt so much about plants, botany, wildlife, by starting from a position of, let's do a painting. And I come out from that painting going, oh, wow, I didn't know that, and I didn't know that, and now I know that. So that's what I hope you...
It's a great source of inspiration. And I'm loving these macaws that you're painting, John. They're absolutely fantastic. Now, I have some fun macaw facts, if you'd like to hear any.
Yes, please. I'd love
Brilliant. So macaws are actually amazing animals. They are really social. And actually, around 3 to 4 years of age, a macaw will actually pick a partner and stay with that partner for life. So they bond for life. And that macaw pair will grow old together, essentially. They'll spend all their time together, they share food, they groom one another, and they care for their young together as well. And actually, as John said, you can see them flying around the rainforest. And actually, they'll stay together in their pairs. You'll see pairs of macaws flying together, and that's that bonded pair who are staying together for life. And they're really long-lived birds as well. So they can live for 60 years plus, sometimes even as long as 100 years. So they will spend their entire lives, even though they're incredibly long lives, together, which is really lovely, I think. Very, very sweet birds.
That's beautiful, isn't it? And that sense of kind of being together and being in the forest is, again, that this is their home, and these are really intelligent. Well, all animals are very intelligent. We do not give animals enough credit. We just really don't. They have empathy. They are intelligent. They are tool makers. They do problem solve, and birds show that time and time again. But certainly macaws are part of that. So these creatures, they stay together for life. They do have feelings. They do care. They can problem solve. And when their forest comes down, that's their home.
Absolutely. And macaws actually really rely on the big old trees for their nesting holes. So they'll give birth to they'll lay their eggs in that nesting hole of around 3 to 4 chicks who will hatch in there, and they stay in that hole until they're ready to fledge and they've got all their feathers. But when they hatch from the egg, they're actually totally blind. They have their eyes closed, no feathers at all, and they're totally reliant on their parents, who will bring them food throughout the day, so they can grow nice and healthy and strong.
Wow, and that message there you have about them needing the old trees, and that is an issue. If we take out all the big old trees, hardwood, typically trees, things like mahogany and teak that come out of the rainforest to make furniture, that we really don't need to do that, or they're just taken down for logging. Even when the rainforest starts to rejuvenate, it's going to take decades or even hundreds of years to get those old trees back. So you lose whole habitats that whole chunks of wildlife depends on. And you remove the macaw, then you're going to remove one of the species that's spreading the nuts from trees, so they can crack open nuts to feed with their amazing beaks. They're very strong beaks. and then naturally the rainforest dies back again. So it's this kind of the whole chain reaction, either positively as nature fights back, or negatively as we start to take away from it. It can happen quite quickly, and it's a really good point, Charlie, that you know.
Absolutely. And as well as that, macaws do face other threats as well. Obviously they're very intelligent, and they are very good at mimicking as well. So you might have seen clips or videos of macaws that are in domestic settings appearing to talk. So they learn to copy human speech, and it looks like they're talking, which might seem really lovely, but actually macaws don't cope so well in domestic environments or in captivity. And actually, a lot of them are still taken from the wild. And it's not just macaws, there's other parrot species around the world. So in Africa, for example, the grey African parrot, they are now critically endangered. And that's because they are still being taken from their wild habitats to go into the pet trade. And that's where Born Free comes in as well. We help to support an organisation out in Cameroon in Africa called the Limbe Wildlife Centre. And they've actually helped to rescue over 3,000 African grey parrots that were destined for the pet trade. So they've been taken from the wild, from their natural habitats. But thankfully, they've now been released back into the wild where they belong. They're really social birds. They live in big flocks as well. So again, being on their own in a domestic environment isn't the best place for them to be. So we're working really hard to help protect parrots and macaws in their natural habitat, but also return ones to the wild where we can in places like Africa, but also to strengthen laws as well to make sure that they are protected in their natural habitat.
Yeah, and the pet trade has also been decimating orangutan along with palm oil. But that, keeping on the pet trade, there is a horrible trade in this, and wild animals need to be in the wild. They really should not be in captivity of any sort. It's been very hard to argue why they would be. We do need to stop that from happening, and just be aware that it's not cute or fun or a good thing to aim for to have a wild animal of any sort in captivity. It's just not. That's just not the way the animal would want to live, and it means that we are basically decimating our ecosystem, which effectively long-term decimates our own futures as well.
Absolutely. So something to think about if you're thinking about getting a pet. Maybe think, actually, domestic animals are better than exotic pets, because exotic pets deserve to live wild and free. But brilliant. We actually are coming up towards the end, so we've got about 5 minutes left. We've had so many questions, so for any that we don't manage to get to, I'll try and send those to John afterwards, and we can hopefully get answers across to you in the next couple of weeks or so.
Quick fire them if you like.
We'll do a couple of quick fire ones. We've got one from St John's in Camborne. Actually, I've had my eye on this one, John, because you don't normally paint things like the rainforest. You normally paint kind of lovely, beautiful beach scenes of the local area around Cornwall where you live. And St John's School have asked, they've been studying work, and they've asked, why do you include so many black dogs in your paintings?
Oh, well, for two reasons. They're actually really, really dark purple, because I don't use a black in my paint box, because if it contaminates other colours, I like it to go purpley colour rather than just sort of dull them all down. They're a really good point of contrast on the painting, so it works visually. But I used to know a lovely little dog called Bella, who was a dog who used to be sneaked into the Eden Project. She was a Scotty dog. So they're often Scotty dogs. And she basically was a trailblazer for dogs being allowed at the Eden Project. She belonged to a lovely lady called Deborah Hinton, who's I won't go into Deborah's story. She's lovely, very OBE, and there's disaster relief committees founded with her husband, amazing things. She literally used to sneak Bella in until Eden decided that maybe dogs should be allowed. But Bella was really sweet, so a fond of Bella. And Scotty dogs have got such a great shape, right? Kind of square heads and square bodies. And then the other dog I'll put in fairly often was my sausage dog, Diggory, who's no longer with us, sadly. But again, really amazing shape, and he can go in bright orange. So it just represents dog, pet, fun, family, at the essence of fun.
Lovely. That's really sweet. Thanks, John. What a nice story. A one-word answer for you, John. What is your favourite insect from the Amazon?
Ooh, one word. I'm gonna go spider, even though I wasn't keen on them, because I think they are fascinating. They're also incredibly useful. That's not a one-word answer. I failed. Spider.
Amazing. Brilliant. Another one-word answer from Roswarp School. What's the strangest animal you've ever painted?
Probably the rhino, to be honest. Yeah, rhino. It's, again, not a one-word answer, but it's highly unlikely looking. But do you know all the African animals are? Follow the Last Chance to Paint Precious Africa. You'll see they're so unlikely, all these animals, and they're fabulous.
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, there's amazing wildlife out there. Even things like the zebra, we're quite familiar with it, but actually when you see it, it's actually quite a bonkers animal, really.
All is. It's like each one is so uniquely designed, as it were. It's like, yeah, please follow Precious Africa. You'll love it. Again, not one word. Apologize.
No, that's all good. Brilliant. Fantastic. So we've had a couple of questions more around your art. So what's inspired you from Rotherfield Primary School, and also why do you use such bright colours as well?
Okay, what's inspired me is the natural world. So whether that's the coast of Cornwall and the beaches and our place in it, sandy, sunny sandwich days out, I just love it. It's just life. But the natural world's inspired me. I always used to go around as a young boy with a camera and a notebook and my binoculars and just immerse myself with it. So painting's a way of me engaging with that the whole time. Second part of the question, Charlie, what was that?
Oh, why do you use such bright neon colours?
Yeah, well, why wouldn't I? I mean, the world is bright neon colours if you look at it. When the sun comes out in Cornwall, the sea will be iridescent turquoise, and the banana plants and palms that grow around the coast will be lime greens, and the sky will be a deep blue. And when the sun goes down, it's a bright orange and rose pink. So that's what I see, and that's what I paint.
Amazing. That's brilliant. We have a quick question from Forefield Junior School, and that is, do you ever use pen or pencil, or is it mostly just paints?
I occasionally use pen and watercolor in a drawing book, but very rarely now, because I tend just to travel with my canvases and acrylic paints, and I will just paint directly on it. I will sometimes do a drawing before I make a painting, but literally only in my head. And maybe on the canvas, I'll just with a brush with no water and no paint. Probably doesn't sound like it makes any sense. And I just pretend I'm leaving like glowing lines to get a rough composition of horizon, broad shapes in the foreground, maybe where a building might go or an elephant, and then I'll paint. Simple as that.
Amazing. That's brilliant. Thanks, John. I think we have time for maybe two more, and then we'll probably start wrapping up. But one question about your Amazon or your rainforest paintings as well. Why are the butterflies a lot bigger than everything else?
Because they're closer. Yeah, I mean, you can make it as close as you like, or as big as you like. So we know the size of a butterfly, roughly what it will be. It's not going to be the size of a table, but in the Amazon, they can literally be like that. The amorphous butterfly could be that big. However, if you put an object bigger, our brains will go, it's closer. So it's a way of getting depth into a painting.
Amazing. I didn't know that about your painting before, so that's really interesting. That's great. And final one-word answer again, if that's okay. If you could draw or paint any animal in the world, what would it be?
A unicorn, but I can't find one.
I look forward to seeing that painting soon. That would be brilliant.
Yeah, no, seriously, I think, well, the rhinos were definitely there, was on the top of my list to paint. I just think I don't have a specific one. The rhino was there because there were so few of them, the northern white rhino. Every and any animal I would love to have a go at painting within its environment, which is important, and with the people that interact with it as well. For me, that's really important as well.
Amazing. No, that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, John. We have now run out of time, but as I said, you are more than welcome to continue painting after we close this webinar today. We'd like to thank you so much for joining us. We'd also obviously love to see what you guys have painted. So please do, if you have the time, take photographs of what you've done today. And you can either submit them to the Last Chance to Paint World Gallery, or you can also tag us on social media if your school wants to share them on social media. So you can tag the Born Free Foundation, Last Chance to Paint, or John Dyer. We'd absolutely love to see what you've been up to and to see your finished paintings as well.
In fact, that's a rule, that's a law. You have to do that, because then we can prove that what we're doing should still be funded for free, and we can still do this with you. So please do that, and send work in for our World Gallery too, please.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'd love to see what you've been doing. And also, just before we go as well, we wanted to tell you about a little fundraiser that John has been organising. It's our Wear Red Non-Uniform Day. And by taking part in this, you can help support the schools that Born Free supports in Kenya by purchasing essential learning equipment for the students out there. So if you want to find out more information, you can find that on the Last Chance to Paint website, or you can email us as well. We'd be more than happy to support your school in running one of those days as well. You can also see in the chat box now, you can book your own free workshops from Born Free. We've got a free educational magazine that you can sign up to, and we've got free teaching resources as well, so you can learn all about wildlife and the environment as well. So yeah, please do get in touch with us. Our email is education@bornfree.org.uk. But thank you so much again for joining us. It's been absolutely fantastic, and a huge thank you from myself and John, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much.
Bye.